From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 10 o'clock news.
The 20-year-old suspect accused of stabbing his mother to death inside their home yesterday is now identified, and he admits he did it. And Wyoming's lone Congresswoman Liz Cheney announces that she will vote yes to impeach President Donald Trump. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade. As the U.S. House prepares to vote on the articles of impeachment against the president, several Republicans have now joined the fight. And tonight, that includes the third-ranking Republican in the U.S. House, Liz Cheney. In a press release, Cheney reflected on last week's attack on the Capitol, saying in part, there has never been a greater betrayal by a president of the United States of his office and his oath to the Constitution. Well, with just 1 week left in President Trump's term, lawmakers are taking steps aimed at removing him from office. Skylar Henry has the very latest.
On Tuesday night, the House began debating a resolution to urge Vice President Mike Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment and remove President Trump from office. But in a letter to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, the vice president said he would not move against the president, writing that it would not be in the best interest of the nation. The House will then seek to impeach President Trump for a second time, with a single article accusing him of inciting an insurrection at the Capitol.
You'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong.
In his first public appearance since last week's violence, the president denied he was responsible for what happened.
If you read my speech, and many people have done it, and I've seen it both in the papers and in the media, on television, it's been analyzed, and people thought that what I said was totally appropriate.
The president said Democrats are dividing the nation.
To continue on this path, I think it's causing tremendous danger to our country, and it's causing tremendous anger.
Here on Capitol Hill, there are signs of growing division within President Trump's party. A handful of GOP lawmakers say they support the impeachment effort. That includes Wyoming Congresswoman Liz Cheney, the House's third-ranking Republican. In a statement, she said the president could have immediately and forcefully intervened to stop the violence. He did not.
All of us should do some soul searching about 5 dead Americans in a country on edge and an inflamed right wing which thinks that we are on the verge of a civil war.
The New York Times is reporting that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is pleased with the impeachment effort, believing it could make it easier to purge the president from the Republican Party. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
And the FBI has warned police agencies in all 50 states that armed groups could be planning to storm federal, state, and local courthouses if the president is removed from office. Well, tonight, more details revealed surrounding Monday's murder of a Billings mom. 41-year-old Jessica Papin died of multiple stab wounds yesterday. Her neighbors heard her screaming in pain. Her son, 20-year-old Bo Papin, is now charged with 1 count of felony homicide. Q2's Shaquille Cozart returned to the scene today to bring us the latest details.
Yes, Jeanelle. Court documents describe a horrific scene. When officers arrived, they saw a lot of blood. Those officers responded to reports of a woman screaming in apartment 102 here at 143 Calhoun Lane. Officers first found an open window and found blood on an interior door. After entering the apartment, officers found 41-year-old Jessica Papin dead in the living room with multiple stab wounds. Officers saw extensive trauma to the victim's face and deep lacerations to her left side of her neck and wrist. Blood was found throughout the living room, and a large knife was found near the victim's head. Now, Jessica Papin is the mother of Bo Papin, who returned to the scene about 2 hours later. Officers arrested him and took him to the hospital due to injuries to his hand. And when nurses asked Papin why he had those injuries on his hand, he said, and I quote, "Haven't you heard? I killed my mom." Back to you, Jeanelle.
All right, thanks so much, Shaq. Now, Papin is scheduled to appear in court tomorrow morning. Well, at the state capitol, Montana legislators looked at a bill today that would limit the governor's powers during an extended emergency. Now, supporters see it as a response to orders put in place during the COVID-19 pandemic. MTN's Jonathan Ambarian reports.
The House State Administration Committee heard testimony Tuesday on House Bill 122. Sponsor David Beatty, a Republican from Hamilton, says he wants to restore the balance between the governor and the legislature.
House Bill 122 leaves intact the governor's power to take immediate action when time is of essence. At the same time, it enables the legislature to fulfill its constitutional role even in times of crises.
HB 122 would limit a governor's initial declaration of emergency to 30 days and a disaster declaration to 60 days, unless the legislature agreed to extend it. It would make it easier for legislative leaders to call a special session and allow lawmakers to terminate a disaster declaration and put limits on the governor's emergency orders. Montana has been in a state of emergency since former Governor Steve Bullock's declaration last March. On Tuesday, supporters of the bill said the governor's directives during that time went too far.
I'd like this bill because it gives us, the people, an opportunity to speak with our legislators, and so that they can get a feel for how the emergency in place or going on is affecting us, the people.
Beatty said the governor needs flexibility to act early, but the legislature should have a role when the situation lasts much longer.
The authors of Title 10 of the Montana Code rightly provided the governor extraordinary power to deal with time-sensitive, immediate crises. But they surely did not foresee the governor retaining such extraordinary powers and the legislative branch being sidelined over an extended period, such has been the case for the pandemic we are currently undergoing.
No opponents spoke during the hearing. The committee took no immediate action on the bill. Now, MTN contacted the office of the current governor, Greg Gianforte, for comment on this bill. His press secretary said that we are very early in the lengthy legislative process, and the governor will carefully review any bill that the legislature sends to his desk. In Helena, Jonathan Amberian, MTN News.
Thanks, Jonathan. Now, Beatty also introduced another bill that would give county and city leaders more authority over orders from local boards of health and health officers. That bill is set for a hearing on Thursday. Well, Montana health authorities report 4 more COVID-19 related deaths today. One of those here in Yellowstone County marks the 6th victim so far this year, the 171st since the pandemic began. Now, the total deaths across the state has reached 1,067 tonight. More than 81,000 Montanans have recovered. As of tonight, Wyoming has now topped 500 COVID-19 related deaths as health officials confirm another 33 this afternoon. All of those deaths happened within the last month. Wyoming has now seen 522 victims with more than 41,000 confirmed cases. And with COVID-19 cases on the decline in Yellowstone County and the new governor indicating an eventual repeal of the state's mask mandate, Billings parents and students are wondering what that means for next fall. Well, School District 2 Superintendent Greg Upham says today there's a lot of unknowns. So Q2's Mitch Laggy sat down with the superintendent to learn more.
Whether or not the Billings School District will be able to offer remote learning next fall hinges on 2 things: the amount of community spread of COVID-19 and the availability of more federal funding.
We don't know what the status of the virus will be next fall, but we feel pretty good about having these discussions at this point in time and at least starting to have an open dialogue with it.
A major piece of the remote learning puzzle is money, with this year's effort costing the district an additional $5 million on top of its regular budget. Upham expects to receive additional help from a new federal relief bill signed into law December 27th last year. Staff don't know yet how much money they'll receive or how it must be spent. The new federal relief money is expected to have similar spending restrictions as the $10 million allocation the district got last year, with the money needing to be spent on COVID-19 related expenses. Upham said he expects to know the district's amount and how it must be spent by sometime this week. That, along with future COVID-19 data, will determine the status of next fall's remote learning.
We won't know more until we know the status of the vaccine, the level of the virus, the amount of funding that's available to us. And we also want to look at our quantitative data too and see how many of our students were successful in the remote setting versus how many students weren't successful, because we've seen that. So we want to evaluate this both from a qualitative and quantitative measure and then make the best decision that we can as soon as we possibly can.
Upham spoke on the phone with Senator John Tester and wrote a letter to Senator Steve Daines recently, ensuring that the senators knew just how much the remote learning cost the Billings School District. This year, the district has about 2,500 students enrolled in remote learning. Reporting in Billings, Mitch Laggy, MTN News.
All right, thanks, Mitch. Now, to read more from our interview with Upham and learn what the school's policy will be on masks in the future, find Mitch's story at ktvq.com. MTN.com. And now over to Chris DeRose for a first look at weather. Dangerous winds set to arrive in Billings, but that's far from the biggest concerns on the threat board.
We've got a bunch of different things that we're following. Of course, wind is kind of the biggest. Dangerous winds throughout tomorrow and Thursday and even a bit into Friday could affect travel. Of course, winds could knock down tree limbs. That could affect power. And it's so dry out there that if fire does catch, winds could easily pick it up. We're predicting 80 mile per hour, potentially 90 mile per hour winds the next 2 days in certain spots. There's the wind coming off the Pacific, indicated by the blue arrows. And as we move into our region, look at that map. Look at all the color. Basically, there is not a spot on there that is not under some watch, warning, or advisory. Now, oddly enough, the temperatures are still doing pretty well, but there is some winter weather to be had in the mountains. That's also coming our way. I'm going to give you the full forecast in just a few minutes, so don't blow away.
All right. Thanks so much, Chris. Well, managing the health needs of our community throughout the pandemic has been both crucial and challenging. The Montana National Guard is now recognizing St. Vincent Healthcare for its role and partnership in fighting COVID-19. From November 5th to December 5th, 20 members of the Montana Air and Army National Guard provided non-clinical support as our community experienced a serious surge in COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations. Today, St. Vincent was honored with the 2020 COVID-19 Response Force patch and an achievement coin.
So I think it was an incredible experience. You know, many people don't have an appreciation for what happens inside of a hospital or a nursing care facility until you go and you spend some time there and you see what people do day in and day out.
To receive something like this from the National Guard and the teams that came in to support us, I feel like we should be thanking them more than them thanking us for this opportunity.
Still ahead on the MTN 10 o'clock news here on Q2, we'll take a look at a future job opportunity for Montana students. Plus, captains of the court meet 3 seniors who look to guide the Lady Broncs to another state tournament.